I'm Carrie, welcome back to my channel, welcome for the first time, all around welcome. I'm Carrieblogger, a full-time career freelancer on Fiverr.com where I offer things like copywriting, branding advice, business consulting, and all of the stuff in between. So in today's Freelance Friday video, I'm going to be answering a question that I received on one of my other videos, and Sandra Poku asked, it would be great if you can do a video on how and why your gigs have changed over the years. One of the nice things about freelancing is that it's literally up to you. It's whatever you want to sell, it's whatever you want to do, whatever you want to charge, however you want to work with people, and that's totally freeform. But the other challenge with that is that it's so freeform that it can be really hard to make a decision. So we're going to start with a look into my origin story, and then we're going to get into things I added, what I don't offer now, and kind of tips and advice along the way. So my origin story is actually one of the biggest questions that I receive in terms of freelancing. People say like, how did you start doing this? How did you know what to sell? How did you know what to offer and what you want to do? And I get that question a lot. I have a full video. I don't ever remember which side of the screen I'm supposed to point at, but I have a full video talking about how I got into freelancing and kind of my journey with that, from being a full-time music education student who was going to be a band director in another world, and then turning into building my six-figure fully sustainable business, which I now do full-time and I love. So that is the full story there. The short version of it is this. In relation to how I knew what to sell, I had visited Fiverr. I read about it in a magazine, just looked it up online, and one of the biggest categories that I saw was for writing. And copywriting and blogging specifically was one of the biggest things that I saw. And I wasn't formally trained in writing. I wasn't like an English major in college, but I've always really enjoyed writing. It was something I was very good at. And I knew that I had the skills to be a good writer, even if I wasn't actually trained in sales writing. And so looking at that, I saw that people were offering that, and I thought, you know what, I can do that. So I created my first gigs for blogging. I think I started it with 600 words for $5, I think, which basically was just like the top end of what other people were offering in terms of cost, or I should say the bottom end of what they were offering. So that was pretty standard at the time. It wasn't like I was undercutting everyone's prices, but looking at what my competitors were doing, I assumed that was a pretty good entry place to start. And then as soon as that picked up traction, I immediately boosted my prices, lowered what I was offering in exchange for kind of the value for my time and some other things like that. Similarly, if you're interested in pricing tips, you should check out this video up here. I dive more into that and how you know kind of what you should price as and all that stuff. Some of the other things I offered at first were really stupid. I honestly wasn't sure what to offer. I offered things like proofreading, because I also read that was pretty popular. I actually hate proofreading. I hate editing. It's so aggravating to me to not be able to just like retweak everything. But when the person wants what they said to be the exact same and I'm just supposed to be like a spell checker, can't hang. Not my cup of tea. So I immediately took that down after I did a couple rounds of it. It just wasn't worth my time. I also had one where I was going to transcribe notes, like handwritten notes into typed notes. I'm not sure why I thought that would really be worthwhile, and it was really hard and took a long time and wasn't worth it, and I didn't like it, and I didn't see that turning into anything in the future. I also offered a really like joke gig. I'm pretty sure it was called like I Will Interpret Your Dreams, and I made up this like really stupid poem for my gig description, and I was just mostly like a joke. Because at that time, a lot of Fiverr stuff was like the just for fun category was kind of a big deal. Which I don't even know if it's still part of the site, honestly, or if it is, it's like a back corner because they're trying to be like very business focused. But yeah, that didn't, I don't think, sell anything, and I just deleted it. I was like, this is not a good idea. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I started with. If I had any others, I honestly can't remember. Oh, I also offered advertisements. At the time I had a blog called Always a Holiday, which has been shut down by me. Didn't like get stolen by the internet. But RIP Always a Holiday for a solid 3 or 4 years. I think it was 4 years, maybe it was 3 total. At least 3 years, every single day, I celebrated the national holiday, National Cotton Candy Day, National Put a Zucchini on Your Neighbor's Porch Day, you know, stuff like that. Every day I celebrated one, took a picture, wrote a blog about it, and posted it. So I was selling promotions on that blog through Fiverr. That's where I started. The why of why I chose to sell those things is a little hard to describe and honestly even to remember, except for the fact that like Number one, I only sold things that I actually had a skill for or I thought I could do well. Writing, again, was the primary skill, and then of course advertising on my blog because I knew that that would be a unique promotion option. The other things that were just for fun, I really just did because I didn't quite understand how the platform worked, I don't think, or at the very least I didn't really understand like the potential of the platform and like what I could actually turn it into and get out of it in the long run. So in terms of the joke gigs, like, don't follow my path. I think it really didn't help anything and it was unnecessary, but it's kind of fun for me at the start. And for the things that I actually did and have continued doing, it all stems from really knowing that you have an actual skill that you can offer people, and then making sure that it is sellable in a unique way. So it's scalable and sellable, and I'll get more into that a little bit later. So I talked a bit about the things that I don't offer anymore, either because it wasn't actually successful, people didn't want it, or I didn't like it, or I wasn't good at it. So there have been a few things, like I offered logo design for a very hot second as part of a branding package. And it was fine. People liked the logos that I offered them. They thought the designs were interesting. I got all good feedback from them. But I just know that I'm not as much of a logo designer as I am a writer. I really tried to teach myself the new skill. I went kind of above and beyond just like personally, and I tried to like hone that and some aesthetic intuitions I know I have, turning them into design, and I really just wasn't comfortable with it, so I stopped doing it. And I think that I'm glad that I made that personal decision for myself before I sold that to someone and it wasn't what they wanted or it wasn't a high enough quality service. I never want to do that. So I think that that's really just like an internal meter you have to know your own quality and to be able to like assess your own value. And you have to be very honest with yourself about that, because if you're not, people will leave you bad reviews and it'll just turn into a big old thing, and you just want to avoid that. Don't oversell yourself, don't overhype yourself, but just balance it with confidence. It's a hard thing to do. Of course, I also added new things. Like I said, I tried logo design. It was just kind of an idea I had. I thought I was pretty interested in it. I wanted to try offering that as services, so I added that. It didn't work out, of course, and so I'm not doing that now. I've also added photography. I've always been interested in photography, but I haven't sold it until I bought a nice camera. I taught myself how to use it. I practiced a lot just in my own home and doing things with like mock requests. Like I would pretend that one of the products in my home someone had asked to shoot. I would think about how I can stage it, how I can light it, how I can do things with that, and then I just practiced doing that until I felt comfortable in my skills in order to sell it. And I really enjoy doing it. It's definitely not one of the core services that I offer. I still wholeheartedly believe that I'm a copywriter first and foremost, but the photography thing is just really interesting for me, and I love product photography. I think it's so fascinating, and it's something that I've gotten better at over the years, and so that, for example, is something I've added just because it was a passion of mine. Of course, before I started selling it, I made sure that I had the skills to back it up, and I was doing that. But your first couple orders, it's very normal, especially if you are a low-cost seller. Those freelancing jobs can be an opportunity for you to actually hone your skills and get better. Just like I did with copywriting. Like I said when I started, I was not a trained sales writer at all. I'd never been trained to sell stuff. I'd just been trained in school to write well. And then I had some natural intuition and skill that I think I just understand the way sales language works. I'm not sure where that came from, but I do think I have that skill. And then, of course, the quality of my initial sales writing in descriptions, blogs, website content, email campaigns, ebooks, crowdfunding campaigns, all of the majority of things that I sell in the copywriting world have gotten immensely better just with practice since I started to where I am today. It's not that what I was selling initially wasn't good or wasn't high quality or wasn't worth what I was selling, but of course having almost 7 years of experience under my belt makes me a better writer today than I was back then, and that's just the normal evolution of your skills and being able to put them to the test. I know this has kind of been like an amorphous story time video basically. I would make sure that you focus on something you're passionate about, because at the end of the day, when you're doing a freelance job and you're building your own business, you want it to be something that you actually enjoy doing. If you're making yourself do things, like if I decided proofreading was going to be the core of my business, I would not be doing this today. I guarantee it, because I really hated doing it. It was not fun, it was not worth my time, and it wasn't something I like wanted to put passion and energy into. So definitely sticking to things you're passionate about is really important, because that's what you're going to care the most about, and you're going to want to deliver the best service, so you get to keep doing it. Otherwise, I can see that you would definitely have a chance of like spiraling self-sabotage. If you really didn't like it, why would you try so hard to make yourself look great at it and treat customers the best? You know what I mean? Like, if it's not something you're passionate about, inherently in the back of your mind, you're not going to give your full self into it. So passion first. Make sure it is a real skill you actually have. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but I do feel like I should have to say this. One of the biggest complaints about Fiverr and other freelancing sites like that is when people feel like they got scammed or duped or whatever by ordering something that someone doesn't actually know how to do, or they don't actually do well. And so make sure that you're not one of those people. If you want any chance of long-term success and to actually build something, you're going to need to have skills that you actually know how to do. It really all has to do with your own personal assessment of skill, credibility, trust value, all of that stuff. Just take a good look internally. Do I feel good selling this to people? Do I feel like I actually have the skills to back it up? If you don't have a resounding yes, don't do it. Or at the very least, make sure that you do more practice and training first before you start selling those skills. Make sure that you're setting yourself up in some kind of a niche. So it has to be scalable, like I mentioned, and it has to be something people can actually search for to find. So there's a difference between if I just said, I will write business writing of any kind for anything, for anyone, anywhere. That is really hard to do because people aren't going to know what to search for. You're not going to have relevant search tags. You're also not going to have people come to you and feel like they know instantly it's a good fit with the two of you. Does this even make any sense at all? I don't know. And lastly, just be really aware that as you're setting things up and you're trying to decide like what gains traction, what's actually interesting for people who want to order from you, what is like relevant in the market, be aware that it does go through fluctuations. And I'm going to be talking about this in next week's Freelance Friday video in more depth, but kind of the volatility of traffic and orders and impressions. So just be aware that it might be a long-term thing, and I'm gonna say it is a long-term journey to get traction and success and build something up. So if you happen to start a gig about blogging, we'll use that as an example, and it just happens to be like a high traffic time, you see lots of impressions, you see lots of interest in it, and a couple sales, that's great. And then let's say 2 months later, you start a gig about product descriptions, and that just happens to be in the 2 months later, there's a little bit of a slump, you're not seeing as much traffic, you're not seeing engagement or orders. That's not to say that product descriptions aren't going to be a viable and like well-selling gig. It could be that it's just a little bit of kind of where the market is right then and where things are flowing, you know? So don't get your hopes like crushed immediately just because things don't turn out right away. Just keep in mind that things are fluid and flexible in the freelance world, and not everything is just a streamlined bar graph. So I will be digging more into that next week in terms of how that looks for my earnings, volatility, traffic volatility, orders, all that, and how I keep track of things and keep a level head to not freak out when things get a little slow. All right, honestly, I don't know how helpful this was. I'm afraid that it's gonna be like a dumpster fire when I edit this, and hopefully I can make it make some sense. Thank you again so much for your comment that sparked this video. Like I said, I really hope this is helpful in some way, shape, or form. If you're interested and you liked it, please be sure to like this video. Comment below if you have your own question you'd like me to comment on and just ramble on for who knows how long this video ends up being. That'd be great. And of course, subscribe to my channel. I have more Freelance Friday video content coming every single Friday, and I'm just so excited to be creating this content for you. So good luck, and let's get back to work.